What? The infallible Hermes of Reason made an oopsie. Yes, it's true. In my last video, I said some things.
What the hell is this intro? Like, it's not like a philosophy intro. It's weird. And he's talking like he's a channel with 100,000 subscribers or something. I guess he wants to be. But he has 69 subscribers. Like, how many videos does this guy have? And what are they like? Okay, not very many. Oh, look. Okay, so he thought he was going to make philosophy videos. And he did 4 of them. And then he stopped for 8 months or 7 months. And then he made 3 of them.
That I was wrong to say. Nah, just kidding. I actually just didn't explain it as clearly as I could have, so second time's the charm. So it's critical mindfulness again.
He's doing so much facial expressions. He's high energy. It's very social. I don't like it.
Baby, but this time explained and with memes. So in Sam Harris's book, Waking Up, a guy just...
Jesus. He like stuck his tongue out and made devil horns. On a supposed philosophy video? You know, there's some people that don't bother me, like Lieutenant Corbus, who changed her name, I think. I don't even know how to spell this. Lieutenant Corbus. No, I wanted her YouTube. Not her YouTube. Did she get banned from YouTube or something, or do I just have to search for like Soph? I see, she did get banned. Oh, recently, only a few days ago. That's 9 days ago she got banned from YouTube. Anyways, I was gonna say that, like, you know, she's normal and kind of social, but she didn't annoy me in the way the Hermes guy, like, I do not like something about him. He's doing something worse, I think, than just this. He's doing it really try hard. Maybe that's it. He's like extra energetically social. He turned it up to 11.
He emphasizes the problem of being lost in thought, and how that kind of general distraction, or what he calls thinking without knowing that we're thinking, is a huge problem. And the reason why it's a problem is because, you know...
Okay, so being lost in thought means you're not paying attention to the world around you because you're thinking. That is a good thing, and it doesn't mean thinking without knowing you're thinking. You totally do know you're thinking when you're lost in thought. That's like the whole point of it, is that you're thinking a lot. Like, is he retarded?
Knowing that we're thinking, and how that kind of general distraction, or what he calls thinking without knowing that we're thinking, is a huge problem. And the reason why it's a problem is because, you know, what he calls being lost in thought is basically a way in which we get distracted from living the lives that we actually want to live. So the case for...
Wait.
Problem of being lost in thought, and how that kind of general distraction, or what he calls thinking without knowing that we're thinking, is a huge problem. And the reason why it's a problem...
Thinking without knowing that we're thinking. Yeah.
Because, you know, what he calls being lost in thought is basically a way in which we get distracted from living the lives that we actually want to live. So the case for...
So first he says it's thinking without knowing you're thinking, and it's being lost in thought, but those make no sense. And then he says it's being distracted from the life you want to live, so it's like being stuck in your head, but that's not... You know you're thinking when you're stuck in your head, instead of paying attention to the world.
Mindfulness meditation here, which is a central part of his book, a central practice that he tries to teach.
I wonder if Sam Harris fucked this up, or it's just this guy. This guy seems like dumb enough that it could easily not be Harris's fault.
Is that it will help us quickly notice when we are unthinkingly being led astray from living the lives that we want. And this is actually happening everywhere. I mean...
Wait, I'm gonna Google that though. Sam Harris, lost in thought. Does Harris actually say... Alright, so he has a blog post called We Are Lost in Thought. You're thinking. Is he gonna say that? Because if you're distracted by it, you know what's happening, I think. I don't like this stuff, but I think Hermes just said it wrong. Like, really badly wrong. Wait, this one came up as the first result for this. Wait, seriously? He said we must begin thinking about something at the end of his thing about stop thinking too much. This is dumb and confused, but whatever. I'm gonna go back to the video.
You
know, the main takeaway I got was Hermes of Reason horribly misstated what Harris said. It's not even close. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't understand the words Harris said.
Even when they know that they don't really want to binge eat, or they know they have like a problem with that, but they will still do it anyway. Now, what Sam Harris calls lost in thought, or thinking without knowing that we're thinking, isn't actually thinking.
Wait, Sam Harris does not call lost in thought equal thinking without knowing that we're thinking. At least not in the essays I found. If he does call it that, and anyone knows of it, please send me a link. Because that would be terrible. So either Hermes is just wrong that Harris ever said that, or Harris is, you know, screwing up badly. And either way, Hermes doesn't seem to have noticed that that makes no sense.
Thought is error correction. And so, in the case of binge eating, in spite of knowing that that's not really what you want, you have to not be thinking. It's not
Okay, the claim thought is error correction is utterly ridiculous. Like, you can use your thinking to error correct, but you can also do it to other things, for other purposes. Not all thought is error correction. Like, the Popperian view is that reason or rational thought is good at error correction. That's one of the purposes or focuses or main points of it. It needs to be like pretty good at being able to correct errors. But certainly not all thought. You can think irrationally or badly or whatever.
Not just your thinking is elsewhere, it is that you are actually not error correcting in that moment. Now, it's a common misconception to think that meditation is about becoming thoughtless, but I think rather what Sam Harris is really trying to say is that it is about becoming more thoughtful, where you are actually able to have like this kind of critical distance from you doing something unthinkingly, to where then you can sort of like remind yourself, oh yeah, I don't actually want to do this. I don't actually want to binge eat. I'm not actually, still hungry and that type of thing. So it opens the door to creative criticism there in that moment. So in a very similar way that Sam Harris describes it, what mindfulness can get you to recognize is that you are not the, appearances in your mind per se, but you are more like the mind space in which those appearances are coming and going. And so you're almost like the room of consciousness rather than what's in that room. Now, arguably, the defining quality of what makes a mind is its creativity. And creativity is dynamic. The whole notion of kind of going from one thing to another, and you might say being distracted, is actually...
Oh, it's a PewDiePie thing? Yeah, I don't watch PewDiePie. I mean, I've watched like a little bit of PewDiePie, but not really. So I had no idea that was a PewDiePie reference. That's fucking terrible. Like, what the fuck is this shit? He's just straight copying like multiple things off PewDiePie? Right, so Soph doesn't do that. Soph is like reasonably chill. She's like a normal person who's socially calibrated, but she isn't going like way out of her way to pander like hell. And like she's internalized a lot of normal social stuff, but not to such a degree as someone who's actually just like intentionally copying PewDiePie, like words and voice tones and stuff. When Internet says 1.5 million more subs, I'm pretty sure he means 1.5 million times more subs, which is different. Well, how many subs does PewDiePie have? It's like something obscenely high, right? He's like number one, or is he? Maybe he's not number one anymore. Yeah, he's like 100 million subs. Yeah, so more than 101.5 million additional subs. Oh yeah, this guy's under 100. So yeah, it's more than a million times as many subs.
Like a necessary feature of our creativity, being able to, rearrange and combine existing things and try to solve different problems and stuff like that. I mean, we have like a whole range of stuff that we could potentially be interested in, or a whole range of interesting problems that we could be interested in.
There's a jump cut there. I started watching for them after the like seeing how fake it was, so I was like waiting for the next jump cut. So there was one. It was very short and small, like it was hard to catch if you weren't looking, but there was a jump cut.
Solving, and so it's necessary that we're able to kind of like go from one thing to another in that way. So distraction is only a problem.
There was another jump cut right there. I normally make my stuff with no jump cuts, like no editing. I don't do retakes. I don't break it up into multiple clips. I just talk. You will see jump cuts in some of my videos because I literally use automated silence removal where software goes through and finds like long stretches where I didn't talk. Like if I don't talk for like 2 or more seconds or something, it can detect that and just cut it out, so you get a jump cut. Although I guess you're not, you only see them if I'm moving my mouse though, because there's no face cam. But anyways, my jump cuts do not mean that I was doing editing or that I did retakes or anything like that. They're just silence removal. Whereas this guy, I'm pretty sure that those are editing and retake type jump cuts. And I think there's a lot of them.
Problem insofar as it relates to not actually thinking. But
he did something with his eyes where he looked to the left twice. Like, he's doing so many mannerisms and stuff.
Ability to kind of have a wide range of things that you're interested in and kind of just hop from one thing to another and explore all of them in a way is a good thing. I mean, if you're solving problems and you're...
He does that over and over. He looked to his right like 5 times in the last like 10 seconds.
Having fun and stuff like that.
Did it again, and then there was a huge jump cut after that too.
Given that our minds work in this way, the space of, potentially moving from one thing to another is the space in which...
The space of is the space. I knew space was gonna be a keyword where he bullshitted because I saw something about it earlier. Or it came up on Discord or something.
Which unthinkingness, or you might even call it rationality, rears its head or takes advantage of and exploits. And there are...
He might not be misstating Sam Harris. Like, it's possible Sam Harris has said that. Like, it would not be shocking if Sam Harris said something that dumb. But my best guess at this point is it's just Hermes misstating it. It's certainly not what those essays I found were saying. And Hermes seems like the kind of guy who could easily just misstate Sam Harris. Completely change the meaning, not realize the new meaning makes no sense.
There are real things out there that are looking to take advantage of that dynamic capacity of our minds. And those things are what David Deutsch in his book...
He does a lot of eyebrow lifts and stuff like that.
The Beginning of Infinity, in particular his chapter, The Evolution of Culture,
Wait, he's showing off with a paperback copy of The Beginning of Infinity? Like, I hate paper books, but even I have a hardback of it. Well, I guess I didn't actually pick the book, but like if you buy it on day one, you get a hardback, right? Like the paperback only came out like a year after the book or 6 months or I don't know. But like I think like the early adopters, they make them buy hardbacks and then they charge them extra, right? And then paperbacks edition is like the second edition. So if he has a paperback, was he like late to read BOI? Did he not get it at release? Is he like that newbie that he's only started um trying to join this community that recently? Like that's not the worst thing if it's true. It's just I think it's notable if he's like a newbie. He certainly doesn't say like, "Hi guys, I'm new here," even though he only has like a few videos and like no writing to speak of, I think.
Calls anti-rational memes. So a meme is like a behavior with this corresponding meaning or idea that gets itself replicated in the same way that genes get themselves replicated, namely by just simply outcompeting their rivals. And the anti-rational memes do this by suppressing.
Look at his facial expression. That's not normal talking. And is he really that hyped doing his like third take of repeating a brief summary from a book that he's a late adopter of?
Suppressing creative criticism, while there are rational memes which rather encourage creative criticism. So especially the anti-rational.
He didn't even explain it right. Rational memes encourage creative criticism? Like, that's not false, but it doesn't explain what they are or why or how they work. Like, it's just sort of a side thing. Like, he was trying to say it that way to make a contrast. Like, the one is anti-criticism, the other is pro-criticism. And there is a contrast there, but that does not explain what they do or how they replicate. Like, the replication strategy of a rational meme is not encourage criticism. Like, receiving criticism doesn't make it replicate. It replicates by being useful, which includes surviving criticism, but it also includes, you know, making your stomach full or whatever.
Rational memes that suppress creative criticism, they have to take advantage of this space or.
It says that he's saying that irrational memes, or anti-rational, suppress creative criticism. Why does he keep saying creative criticism? Like, they suppress all criticism. They suppress uncreative, like, repetitive, rote, and stupid criticism, too. Maybe it's not always a threat and not always suppressed, but it frequently is. It certainly can be.
Potential for doing things unthinkingly, because if you were thinking, that means you'd be error correcting. That means you would be using creative.
Why does he only look to his right and not his left? He's doing it over and over. Do you think he has a script to his right?
Potential for doing
That was a jump cut.
things unthinkingly comes out of this space where we're able to be sort of distracted and dynamic, going from one thing to another. And so what the anti-rational
That was a jump cut, and he looked to his right like 3 more times during that like 6-second segment.
memes do is they hijack that space and entrench certain patterns of behavior that we can do unthinkingly. And again, they have to do that, otherwise we would be able to recognize them quickly and error correct our way out of doing them. So it's been a while since I've read Sam Harris's book, Waking Up, where, you know, this is where I first learned about mindfulness meditation. But I highly doubt he talks about memes in the book. But I do think that there is a sense in which
He highly doubts Harris talks about memes in the book. Why doesn't he just fucking search an ebook? They're not hard to download, even if you don't want to pay for them for some reason. Or doesn't it have an index? Why didn't he check the index? I bet you that book has an index. I'm curious now. It's actually like, I think it's like popular oriented enough that it doesn't necessarily have an index. Like it's possible it doesn't. And you can look for meme. So here we have memory, should be a little before that. Meditation, before that. Medicine, MDMA, no meme. So why did he not look it up? He's just an incompetent scholar. This is not hard. He had the book in front of him.
you know, or, you know, you could just say irrationalities. I think that there's a sense in which being able to be more thoughtful.
A lot of the times he looks to the right, he's looking like up and to the right. It reminds me of the NLP thing, where they talk about like eyes going to different places indicates different types of thoughts. And I find it like a bit bullshitty, and I think they like overstate how accurate it is and stuff. But I haven't actually like carefully looked into it. I also have not like filmed myself to see if I move my eyes or something. But I have watched many other people do videos, and I haven't noticed this.
And mindful about your space of thinking or capacity to think in a moment in which you might not be thinking can be extremely valuable.
You see how much, and it's always the one direction. And some of them aren't up, they're just right. But some of them are upright.
To overcome your rationalities. Of course, that is just kind of one step in the right direction. You need other kind of
again,
criticisms in order to actually not just fall right into that pattern of behavior. So I will link to say
there was a jump cut, and also he turns his whole head to the right sometimes, really quickly. But only the right, never the left.
Harris's book in the description below, but I also highly recommend and will link to David Deutsch's book, The Beginning of Infinity, for more on memes, how knowledge works, a little bit about rationality.
Wait, the video's ending. He like didn't say anything. I mean, admittedly, I was super distracted and cut the video up a lot, but he didn't say anything, right? I don't think there was like a major substantive part that I missed somewhere in the middle.
Is my favorite book of all time, so highly recommend that you get that, and you can get both.
It's his favorite book of all time. Was that BOI?
So highly recommend that you get that, and The Beginning of Infinity is my favorite book of all time, so highly recommend that you get that, and you can get both for kind of maybe some kind of.
Was that a PewDiePie thing when he went so da-da? That seemed to me like it could be a PewDiePie thing.
Convergence on the two in regard to maybe how to unshackle from our irrationalities. And
there's another jump cut. Was there one right before it though?
Maybe how to unshackalities. And that is all for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the
video. No,
it's
just cut there.
If you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Keep making progress.
Okay, so I did not like that video. Let's see what Justin and Alan have to say. Ooh, Justin's pretty quiet. Let's wand him.
On this thread, I changed my mind about David Deutsch thread at Elliot's blog, and the person anonymous asked, "The fuck is wrong with DD lately?" So I was curious, so I went to that, and it's DD lately. And so he says, after I logged out, by the way, blocking is so silly because you can just log out and see what people say. So David UK was not very effective. So David says an interesting connection, and then the thing he's quoting is this guy.
Okay, that Pokemon reference.
Who says this? A discussion on how mindfulness rationality.
Oh yeah, so that reminds me, fucking DD retweeted this video. That's why I was watching this video. Like, so, to echo my anonymous blog comment, what the fuck is wrong with DD that he would retweet a video like this? Like, this video was terrible. Like, really, really terrible. I know he said BOI was his favorite book, but I don't think that alone, most near the end of a video, is enough reason to retweet the video. Did DD say something, or did he just... Yeah, here it is. An interesting connection. Like, DD knows that a lot of mindfulness and meditation is bullshit. He's not a fan of that stuff, not actually.
So I'm gonna start the video and start talking.
Uh-oh, looks like Hermes made an oopsie. Oopsie. Yes, it's true. In my last video, I said some things that I was wrong.
Just this is a side comment. This is not the primary thing I'm gonna talk about, but just this is like the most try-hard, social, trying to be funny, doing voices intro, and it's not even very good for what it's trying to do. It's like, I mean, I'm definitely not the right audience for this kind of thing in the first place. But I feel like I have some sense of what's good within the genre and what's not, and this just is kind of, I don't know, it's not good. It troubles me. But anyway, that's a total tangential aside. And not...
Oh, by the way, I've watched some PewDiePie videos. And he didn't put me off. I didn't find him particularly annoying or awful or whatever. Like, I know he does various memeing and stuff, and I'm not like a huge fan, but it was like okay, just like I was saying Soph was. It wasn't awful. Whereas this guy, just immediately I'm like, Jesus Christ, no.
I just didn't want to leave it without any comment.
Nah, just kidding. I actually just didn't explain it a second time's the charm. So it's critical mindfulness again, baby. But this time, explain, and with memes. So in Sam Harris's book, Waking Up,
That's at least 3 jump cuts so far.
A Guide to Spirituality Without Religion, he emphasizes the problem of being lost in thought, and how that kind of general distraction, or what he calls thinking without knowing that we're thinking, is a huge problem. And the reason why it's a problem is because, what he calls being lost in thought is basically a way in which we get distracted from living the lives that we actually care.
That was another jump cut. That's like a lot of jump cuts to do that intro. Like, it's so non-congruent for him. It's so out of his actual personality and modes of communication or whatever, that it takes him like, multiple separate mini chunks of very brief emoting in order to be able to make it. Like, he can't actually go like 20 seconds straight doing his PewDiePie imitation. And he still thinks it's a good idea to put it in a video. Like, if you need that many jump cuts, it's a sign that you shouldn't be making the video you're making. You have no right to that content. You don't own it. It's not something you actually understand what you're doing well enough. That many jump cuts is a sign of overreaching if you're trying to present this kind of thing. Like, it's really bad to have a bunch of jump cuts in a video depending on what you're doing. Like, but for this type of video where he's trying to talk about ideas, and also for that, just the casual intro that's supposed to be like, hey guys, preparing here, blah blah blah, if you're just doing that intro, you should be able to say that like naturally.
He tries to teach, is that it will help us unthinkingly. People say.
Notice, by the way, it's talking about lost in thought, but then
Binge.
So he's talking about being lost in thought, but then talking about being unthinkingly led astray, and from the life you want. Being lost in thought, it has a connotation to me that's not really what he seems to be talking about when you're just. The negative connotation. Right. So if somebody's concentrating or pondering over something, and they're sort of like another way you say somebody's like in their own head or something, and it says, for example, Gwen didn't hear a word you said. She was lost in thought. So she's thinking deeply, pondering, introspecting, not really paying attention to the world. So I guess this guy is just relating Sam Harris's view. So maybe Sam Harris is the one who's using the term in a non-standard way, but whatever.
Yeah. So I checked, and it just seems to be Hermes' fault.
Binge eat, even when they know that they don't really want to binge eat, or they know they have a problem with that, but
binge eating is that's a really different topic than being lost in thought. That's a bad habit.
Still do it anyway. Now, what Sam Harris calls lost in thought or thinking without thinking isn't actually thinking. Thought is error correction.
All right, so let's back up because this is where it starts to go really off the rails. And I'm just gonna let this play a little bit for a second.
They will still do it anyway. Now, what Sam Harris calls lost.
The Hermes guy is not trying to learn to respond to these Discord messages. His goal in this video is not to learn something, it is to teach other people. And he's starting as a teacher before he ever did the learning on any discussion forum or ever made videos where he's trying to study something. Like if you watch Justin's videos, you will see Justin like trying to figure out some grammar stuff, and he's going through it and you can see he's trying to learn things. He's showing his learning process. Whereas this Hermes guy is not doing that at all. It is trying to be a polished PewDiePie style sort of video where he's teaching you and he's supposed to be presenting himself as the expert. And it's not just that he presents himself that way, it's that his actual life is focused that way. Well, maybe behind the scenes he tries to learn things, I don't know. But he's not doing public learning, which is crucial if you want criticism. You have to expose your ideas to criticism. He's not creating anything that's optimized for getting critical feedback. This video is not designed to get critical feedback. He will not interact with people like me and Justin. He doesn't want to. He's aware of our existence. He doesn't want to. He says The Beginning of Infinity is his favorite book of all time. But if you go to my website, beginningofinfinity.com, and then you click on discussion, and then you click on sign up here, he has chosen not to do that. And to me, that says that he's not looking for criticism and feedback. He could, if he cared that much about BOI, like he says he does, find people who are involved in BOI in some way, like major fans of it, or people who were editors for the book, or people doing work in the field or stuff like that, and he could try to talk to them and get criticism and ask questions and whatever else. And he's clearly not doing that, or he would have contacted me or someone I know. If he's avoiding all of those people and sticking only to the Luli crowd who are unwilling to debate anything, that is an intentional choice that disqualifies him from presenting as an open-minded expert, whatever he's claiming to be. Anything David says to Harris on a podcast does not represent David's actual opinions reliably. A podcast like that is a public performance. If Sam Harris wanted to have a real and critical discussion with David, they would do it privately. Possibly both, but they would have private discussions on an ongoing basis where Harris could learn a bunch of things from David. That is not happening because Harris doesn't want to do that. David knows that. The same is true of a lot of other people. Harris is just one example. The fact that people are not spending time, at partially private time, emailing questions to David or whatever, indicates their lack of interest and so on, which means if they're having a public discussion, it's just a performance for an audience. That's all it is. It's not part of an actual learning process that they care about primarily. The primary thing is putting on a show. And when David is talking to someone in the context of a show, it is different than presenting his serious thinking. David is quite shy about presenting his serious thinking and actual opinions and views on things. He largely hides them from Twitter. He was the founder of Taking Children Seriously, which he no longer ever mentions, and prefers people not mention that he was associated with. Because, not that he changed his mind about it, just he thinks that people don't like it and it's unpopular. Similarly, David had a political blog. It is no longer online, and he doesn't talk about it, and he normally does not publicly share those opinions. He certainly didn't go up to Harris on their podcast and say, "Why the hell are you anti-capitalism? You're trying to destroy Western civilization. You are the enemy. You are evil. You are doing harm. It would be better if you got hit by a bus and stopped hurting the world." He did not say that, even though that's basically his opinion, if you look at what his politics are and what he thinks. And he knows Sam Harris will never debate capitalism with him. Sam Harris is not open-minded to reconsidering his terrible ideas about production and trade and freedom. That is how David thinks, but Harris doesn't, and Harris doesn't want to talk about it, doesn't want to debate, doesn't want criticism, doesn't want to be questioned about it, and David goes on a podcast and just lets it go, lets it slide, doesn't say anything about it. So you cannot trust anything David said on that podcast to actually represent David's opinions. He was just trying to get fans for himself. That was his goal. He doesn't respect Harris. Harris is not a serious intellectual in David's mind. I don't think he'd want me to say that, but it's hard to like, it's hard to draw lines about what to say or not. Like, I don't say the vast majority of what I know about David. I try to respect his privacy, but I have to say, like, it's important, I think, to say little bits that, especially the kind of things you could, like, infer just from public information. Like, and really broad themes, like, David being in favor of capitalism, and what that means, I think are not secrets. Like, they're not well known, but they're not secrets. If you go read these blog posts, you will find some of David's actual opinions that are extremely contrary to Harris. David did not sign his name on each post, but his name is on the site right here. Those responsible for the website include, and then David Deutsch's name is number 1. And literally, the only other author mentioned is Alan, and you can ask Alan how many of the posts he wrote. I've actually never done that, but Alan, how many of the posts did you write for Setting the World to Rights? Because I'm I would strongly guess that it's like less than 10%, not a huge amount of the posts. Would that be correct? Certainly it's less than half, and that nothing went up on the site that David didn't agree with or want. I would think. Like, he's not going to have his name on the site and then have things he thinks are, like, really bad on the site. Like, there could be minor disagreements, but he was involved with it in a major way. So his views are publicly available. This is a fucking archive.org. See, look, I got it. And so a person who wrote fewer than 10% of the posts was the only other person David could come up with to claim it was a group blog. He didn't even list Sarah as a contributor. By the way, I wrote posts, but only like a few. So you can get some of David's real opinions here. They literally let the domain name expire, in addition to like letting the site have a bunch of spam and then break and stuff. Anyways, when David's like glossing over their massive political disagreements, among other things, it doesn't mean anything if he says something that could be vaguely interpreted as like partially sort of maybe considering that meditation might have some value. Which isn't even wrong. Like, meditation is such a vague term that you can certainly come up with some version of meditating that's okay for some people in some situations or whatever. But doing that is nothing like considering like what is Sam's actual position on the matter, and do you agree with like most of that or not? Which is something David simply would not bring up or talk about on the podcast on purpose, in the same way he did not bring up politics. And he did not bring up that Sam Harris does explanationless science. He wrote in BOI about what explanationless science is and why it's bad. He's really strongly anti-explanationless science. But when he goes on Harris podcasts, I don't know if I've even listened to all of them, but I'm pretty sure he never said, hey, Sam, you literally did that explanationless science stuff that I talk about in my books. So you must think I'm completely wrong. Otherwise, you would think that your own scientific career was a fraud. It's one or the other. You can't be friends with me. You can't respect me as an intellectual, because either one of my main points says you're terrible, or else I'm wrong in a way where I think you're terrible, but I'm wrong. How can you just pretend nothing's wrong and that you're just like peers or whatever and everything's fine in that kind of situation? David's also not a fan of the moral landscape stuff or the God delusion, by the way. Here is some of Sam's explanationless science. It's also low quality and like it does not meet the standards of explanationless science. It's shoddy work, but on top of that, it's also in the category of what David calls explanationless science. Anyways, that Hermes guy doesn't want to have these discussions. By the way, the stuff that I said about David, that's extremely typical of intellectuals. It's hard to know what Jordan Peterson's real opinions are, and what's a performance. Certainly some of what he says is a performance. But he certainly also has some of his real opinions mixed in there. It's not all fake. And like more or less all the intellectuals are like that. Partly they're sharing their actual ideas, and partly they're performers when they're having public conversations.
Recognize is that you are not the appearances in your mind per se, but you are more like the mind space in which those appearances are coming and going.
You're the mind space in which the appearances are coming and going, something like that.
Consciousness rather than what's in that room. Now, arguably, the defining quality of what makes a mind is its creativity. And creativity is dynamic. The whole notion of kind of going from one thing to another, and you might say being distracted, is actually like a necessary feature of our creativity, being able to, rearrange and combine existing.
So first he said thinking is error correction, and then he said the defining feature of a mind is creativity. But creativity is like, it means creating things. Error correcting and creating are different things. They're certainly related, or at least can be related. But there's also a distinction there. And so he's sort of said the primary attribute of a mind is X, and then he said it's Y. And, that's bad. He should have his story straight.
Things and try to solve different problems and stuff like that. I mean,
This is a big tangent. I'm confused.
we have like a whole range necessary that we're able to kind of like go from one thing to another in that way.
I think it's bad that he is claiming implicitly that the social stuff he's doing is compatible with being an intellectual. It's compatible with being the kind of person who understands the book, The Beginning of Infinity, really well. I think he does a disservice to people when he communicates to them that they can be really social and pandering and all this crap he's doing and like memes and devil horn hand signals and whatever else, and they can do all that, and also they can be a super serial intellectual. Like, he's denying that there's a clash there or a choice there, which, by the way, is not the standard view. The standard view is there is a choice to be made there, that you can be one type of person or another, that rocket scientists are a different kind of person who behave in like nerdy ways compared to rock stars. And he's saying, oh, you can just have both. Have your cake and eat it too. It's all great. And people who try to do that, in general, they usually fail at both, but they especially fail at being an intellectual. And so I think he's setting people up for failure, the same failure that he's failed himself. And I think that he partially knows he's a failure, and that he doesn't want to admit it, face it, fix it, but I think he partly knows it. And that he's hiding that from people. It's like the people who go on Facebook, and they know their life is not as good as they present it as being on Facebook. They put up their vacation pictures and whatever, and they try to present their life as really wonderful. And they know that they were bored at work last week, and that their life is not quite the same as they're trying to make it look on Facebook. And I think that Hermes is doing the same thing. He knows that he's not as successful of an intellectual as he's trying to present it as. He's presenting the Facebook timeline of his intellectualness on purpose and not on Facebook. Like, it's expected on Facebook. It is partially expected on YouTube, but to a lesser extent. YouTube is a more serious site than Facebook. It has different expectations. People overall, you find more like realness and genuineness on YouTube than on Facebook, I think. And also, it's expected to be fake like that with your vacation pictures, with typical Facebook material, not with your philosophy work. People think that if you're talking about philosophy, science, math, economics, programming, stuff like that, that you're not doing the social Facebook timeline feed, but are instead being real and being like nerdy and serious and whatever. And so when you do the social fake version of those things, it can actually trick people who get caught off guard.
So distraction is only a problem insofar as it relates to not actually thinking. But the ability to kind of have a wide range of things that you're interested in kind of just way.
What the hell? He just said distraction's only a problem in that how it relates to not actually thinking, something like that. But the thing, Harris was talking about actually thinking, like getting distracted by actually thinking, not getting distracted by not thinking.
It's a good thing.
Oh, backing up. Regarding information I share about David, what he would approve of me sharing or prefer that I share is not the standard that I use. I take that into account, but the standard, the key standard is what have I agreed to? What has he consented to? What do I have a right to share? What does he have a right to object to? Because there are things where he himself would agree I have every right to say it, but he would prefer I don't. He doesn't want me to. For whatever reason, he thinks that is contrary to his interests or whatever. And I still tend not to say those things, but I will sometimes if I have reason to. I think people do know that, Justin. Like, if you ask them, they might not know that in, like, a conversation. But I think that they partially factor it in when they're reading timelines. Like, they're used to it. It's everywhere. They have to know it. This partially know it. They're immersed in that culture. They participate in it correctly. Not everyone does, but a lot of them do. And I think they switch modes for math and science and philosophy. Or they expect a mode switch. Not every time. And it depends on the signaling. Like, this guy does a bunch of social signaling, so people might stay in social mode and see it just the same as an Instagram feed. So they might not be fooled. But they might also say, well, this guy says BOI is his favorite book, and he used some big words, and he talked about Sam Harris, so he's probably smart like Sam Harris. And Sam Harris doesn't present as super nerdy, so that proves that you don't have to present as nerdy as David Deutsch does in order to actually be smart. Because David and Sam are both smart, and one of them is more cool. And, you know, that appears to be compatible and stuff. And by the way, it's not a strict incompatibility. Like, you could present as suave and good-looking and well-spoken and whatever, and also be a good philosopher. It's not out of the question, but it's atypical, and there's reasons that people usually aren't both. And that a lot of the people who appear to be both are not good at the intellectual stuff. I think there certainly are contexts where you expect people to exaggerate, and you're not surprised if they exaggerated a bit. Like, you wouldn't call them liars or whatever, but like, you also sort of know in the back of your mind not to expect literal truth from this stuff. And then there are other contexts where people would expect like literal precision, like when their banker sends them a bank statement, you know, they're expecting that's going to be exactly right. It's a different kind of context. They go into a different mode, and they expect it to be like penny accurate. Whereas when their friend says, I'll be there in 5 minutes, they're not at all surprised if it takes 8 minutes. So people, to some extent, have that mode switching thing going on. They know what's a more precise context. They often get more serious for work stuff and when like money's involved. So Feynman was in some ways charismatic and stuff, but he was also somewhat nerdy in how he came off to people. Like, he was mixed. But like, for a physicist, he was pretty suave. I don't know what like a lot of the old thinkers were like. Like, Burke was a good public speaker. I don't know what Godwin was like in person, you know? I know that one time Godwin said something along the lines of, that guy wants to have a debate in person in real time on a stage with an audience so that he can play off the emotions of the audience, and that if he was serious, he would want to debate the matter in writing. And, you know, I agree with Godwin's sentiment in general. But Burke was very good at public speaking. I'm sure there were other ones who could public speak well. David's not a bad public speaker, by the way, but he's not like an impressive public speaker as far as the speaking goes, as opposed to the content. That's how I see myself as well. Like, I can talk, and I'm not bad at it, but I don't think I impress people with charisma or anything. Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, though, there's quite a bit of charisma in what they're doing, I think. I think that they can actually impress people, sort of separate from what they're saying, and separate from, they said a bunch of smart sounding stuff. I think they do certain social signaling and come off as like confident and whatever. I've seen some Popper clips, and he talks in kind of like a slow, dignified way. Like, there's a certain thing that Popper's doing that's capable of impressing people, but it's different than the like middle-aged sexy guy. He didn't have any sex appeal. He wasn't funny. And he wouldn't appeal to people who are not intellectual. They might be impressed by him and think he's smart, but they wouldn't actually like it. Whereas I think someone like Peterson or Harris can talk to an audience that doesn't like to think, and still they like listening to him. Yeah, telling jokes is a type of social calibration. That's a skill set that people put work into. Some people become funny during childhood in a kind of natural way, whereas others practice it over time at a later age. I have no idea if Harris is a natural or not, but it's within the like social skill set of how to be charismatic and stuff. I'd put it in that category. And I think it's largely inappropriate for serious intellectual work. I think like the occasional joke is okay for like fairly serious but not fully serious stuff. like in David's TED Talks, he has that line about that doesn't prevent them from both being completely false when you're sort of expecting him to say true. So that was funny. Like, I think that's okay, but only because it's TED rather than his book. And TED is less serious. Yeah, Justin, I think that's a bad sign. I don't think it's like a 100% damning sign. So I don't know about the word inherently. Again, that might not be quite the word you mean, and I'm not sure exactly what you mean. But I would say it is a bad sign, but it's not decisive. It's not the only factor to consider. By the way, Feynman complained about that specific issue. Feynman got the Nobel Prize, and then after he got the Nobel Prize, all these like non-physicists and non-intellectuals came to his public lectures. Yeah, I know, I can hear it too. I think it's a lawnmower. It's not going over my noise gate, but when I talk, then it opens my mic, and then you probably hear it some. Anyway, so Feynman got the Nobel Prize, and then he got new attendees at his lectures, and he said that kind of sucked because he felt that he had to say stuff that they would understand or appreciate, so they wouldn't like regret coming. He felt a lot of pressure to do that. Which, by the way, I think he should have just given the lecture he wanted to give. Put a warning on the flyers or whatever, like, you know, advertise it correctly, and then just give his actual lecture he wanted to, and if they don't like it, too bad. But he actually changed a bunch of his lectures to make them more accessible to the people who kept showing up. So it had a significant effect on what he got to say, because he couldn't do a bunch of technical physics and math stuff for those people. Oh, and in terms of charismatic philosophers, I'm pretty sure that some of the Greeks and Romans were like Cicero or Cato or someone. And if you look at like Socrates and that era, I don't know which ones were and weren't, but I'm pretty sure some of them were like good public speakers and stuff.
Is the space in which, although given that our minds work in this way, the space of, you know, potentially moving from one thing to another, is the space in which unthinkingness, or you might even call it rationality, rears its head.
That was such vague bullshit. Like, seriously. That was a lot. That was really empty.
And there are real things out there that are looking to take advantage of that dynamic capacity of our minds. And those things are what David Deutsch in his book, the chapter The Evolution of Culture, calls anti-rational memes. So a meme is like a behavior with its corresponding meaning or idea that gets itself replicated in the same way that genes get themselves replicated, namely by just simply outcompeting their rivals.
So there's a couple of issues that I have with what he's saying so far. And also just a more of a meta comment at first is that if he wants to talk about the beginning of infinity or even whatever the Harris book or whatever he mentioned earlier, he should have the text on the screen and talk about it and like use quotes and talk about it in a serious way. It's instead of like he's making himself very primary.
Oh yeah, I complained about this with Brett Hall's videos about BOI. You just like, you see Brett. He occasionally like reads out loud quotes from BOI. Like why no text on screen? What are they doing? Like, is it lazy editing? If you want to do lazy editing, just do videos the way I do it. Just record your screen and don't edit. And I mean, you can record your screen and put a webcam on in the corner if you want one. You could even make a big webcam and take up like half your screen if you wanted to. And you would still have half your screen to put some text on and quotes and books and whatever. It's not hard. I mean, fucking like girl streamers, Thoughts or whatever, they frequently are not full screen on their cam. Right? Like, you see like Twitch girls, and they will full screen like between games of whatever they're playing or whatever, or when they're talking to their chat, they'll full screen their cam. And then they'll like play a game, and their camera will take up like just the little corner, like they'll do it like larger than the average size of a guy's camera. But I want to show, there we go. Okay, look, like plenty of girls will stream with their boobs in that area of the screen, and that's it. Like maybe a little more, like sometimes you'll see like this or something. Like they don't go half the screen high when they're playing a game, I don't think. Like not quite that much. You do not have to full screen the entire time. That's I think that actually it's important not to. Like you have to have highs and lows. It's like, you know, part of the time your boobs are really big and then they get smaller and the guy's like, well, if I keep watching, this game will end and she'll full screen her boobs again. So there's like an important, that it's not just straight in your face the entire time, that there's ups and downs. I think that's better for whoring out. Yeah, always leave them wanting more. Like you turn on the shit, and then you turn it off again. Anyway, YouTube. I just wanted to skim a Brittany Venti stream. I think she goes back and forth a bit, but I don't remember super clearly. Wait, what the hell are these? These are like 10 minutes. Oh, here we go. Wait, this has a different guy on it.
Math is correct, but yeah, I mean, there does seem to be
Okay,
very
this is
high.
not representative.
So,
Jesus, though, look at the angle she chose to show off her boobs with. Alright. Maybe she has a different channel for streaming. Venti stream. Destiny. Why is it hard to find her, like, actual streams? Are they on Twitch or something? Venti. I thought she streamed on YouTube. Did she get fucking banned or something? I mean, she appears... All the right-wing ones got banned. You don't get banned for being a thought. Like, there are other thoughts. No one cares. It's just because she went to the, like, Charlottesville rally or whatever it was, and, you know, talks with Nick Fuentes and shit like that. She's just too right-wing. That's what she's being banned for. It's not for her boobs. Brittany Venti banned while viewing YouTube shooters' content 1 year ago. Brittany Venti banned from Twitch again for doing an African-inspired cooking stream. Jesus, what you could get banned for. It's fucking ridiculous. Twitch forces black streamer to submit DNA analysis over African cooking show. Oh, did she claim she was African? Or black? I always figured she was white. Banned an African-American girl for an Africa-themed cooking show. And seemed to accuse her of being a white cultural appropriator. I don't know, I think she's kinda white. Like, I think she should be able to do an African cooking show and whatever, but she's obviously race baiting. Like, they're not wrong about that. On other shticks, she, like, pretended to be, like, a Christian and got, like, a Bible and, like, a nun dress or some shit in one of her streams. But she didn't get banned for cultural appropriation from YouTube for that. Wait, did she get banned from Twitter too? Or was it just that tweet? Oh, okay. Oh, she streams on DLD Live or something? What the fuck is this? She has 4,000 followers on this channel? That's like low. She had way more than that on YouTube. By the way, I found her because she made a video that was really quite funny. It was like 20 minutes. What was it? I think I newslettered it. She was doing like a fake interview where she was pretending to be like a feminist who was like, women could do mass shootings too. Something like that. And she said how like women should get more credit per like body because they're women, basically. They should get like bonus points, like their kills count more. I thought it was funny. Why is there nothing when I clicked on videos though? Oh, do you click on replays? No, there's also nothing? What the hell is this website? Seriously, video... Right, she wanted like equal representation of mass shooters. Did she suggest like training women to be mass shooters so that they could be equally represented or something? That seems like the kind of thing she would have said in that video. Wait, I'm already in Chrome. It just didn't work. I'll just try YouTube again, and if that doesn't work, I'm giving up. Maybe under playlists? Is there like a streams playlist? Oh well, I'll just click on like a random video. Okay, look, there's... First of all, she's not even full screen. She put fucking text on the screen. Like, even with that fucking thumbnail, like such a whorish thumbnail, the video literally didn't start with her face. This is a very visual video. Not everything is read out loud.
I'm on billboards and shit.
Have any of you
Look, you can't see her face the whole time. She has other
ever
stuff.
wondered where
I'm on a billboard in Las Vegas as plus, which means
human horseshoe will serve as the playing ground for a different kind of worship, where sacred meets profane. And then, on the code of conduct, it proceeds to say, dress code, look worthy.
get that last?
I get it.
Yeah.
There's people that pay money to see that.
I don't poop.
Yeah, so the scenes like this, where you can actually see Brittany, are like 10% of the video, maybe a quarter, I don't know. It's not full time. So that was my point. Even a total internet whore does not put her picture on 24/7 on her videos.
Thing.
Brittany Venti, by the way, has put like large amounts of text on screen and said pause if you want to read it. And then you can read it, and she's actually like quoted people that she's arguing with and given like, you know, paragraph long quotes followed by like paragraph long counter arguments. She's put that kind of shit in her videos with like quotes and responses like you do in a fucking email. Don't call her a whore on stream. I know her Twitter says like not a thought. That was like her handle. Except she totally is. Like I mean I thought she was a thought before, and then I saw her recent thumbnails where she has like a big, dick-shaped thing in front of her mouth with like a star where it touches her mouth. So, yeah. And then I clicked on her interview with that guy when she did the Skype call, and she had her webcam like 5 feet above her pointing down at her boobs. Maybe not 5 feet, but like she had a serious angle on that thing. So you could see the entire top of her boobs. Anyway, that person, she's actually like kind of intellectual sometimes. And it has put serious quotes and responses in text into videos that you can pause and read like a screen full of text. I think there was one where she did like a succession of like 6 screens of like text and shit. And she just put each one up for like 1 second and you could pause and read them all if you wanted. That might have been in her takedown of Shu. So the point was, compared to this guy, or Brett, who like put up no text on their screen, even when they're quoting from a book that's like a serious intellectual book. And Brittany will put up like actual text quotes of like a YouTube personality in her takedown video, which was more serious than what this guy is doing. Lauren Southern, by the way, also had her serious moments. Like, she bought some stupid paywalled bullshit scientific paper, some like psych study, and did like a takedown in a video. And by the way, did not have her face plastered on the screen the entire time. Yeah, Brittany has put like a lot of research into some of her attacks on other YouTube personalities, which is interesting. She can be quite mean too. But also, some of her arguments, not all of them, were good. Like, she had some good points. But I think she mixed in unfair arguments too, along with the good points. It's more convincing if like half your points are good than if none of them are. Hermes should try that. If he would just make half of his points good, he could be as convincing as Brittany Venti. That was pretty rude what I just said. But yeah, I didn't feel like half of his video was any good, so he's missing the bar there. Like, even to be a bad video, he missed the bar. Kyle, read some of this website. It's like a Reddit for the tech industry. And as far as job interviews, there are like books and whatever else specifically to prepare you for job interview questions in tech. I don't know where you look it up exactly, but you can find material with typical tech interview questions and whatever. It depends on the type of job. Like web dev doesn't get like all the algorithms questions that like a Google software engineer gets, which are hard and require like prep, even if you're a good programmer. You can also just learn general interviewing skills and salary negotiation skills. I like this Ramit Sethi guy for job interview material. So here's just a random thing he made, but search for this guy, and he has videos and blog posts about job interview stuff and salary negotiation, which is also a really important and related issue. Ramit Sethi is very mainstream. His stuff is targeted at normal people doing normal things. So it works pretty well in normal situations. I talked with him once though, and he was not, he didn't really want to think in an intellectual way, was basically my impression. He's very social, because I contacted him twice actually. The first time, I wrote some like interesting, serious comments about like his book or something he wrote or made. And it was like, somewhat friendly and like agreeing with part of it and like writing serious commentary. And he ignored me. And he's like popular and gets a lot of messages and stuff. So it's not too surprising. But anyways, later, I found something of his that I did not like. I thought it was bad. And I wrote some harsh and strong criticism. And this time, I sent it to my own email group. But I CC'd Ramit Sethi because I was criticizing him. I thought, alright, I'll let him have a copy if he's interested, as like a courtesy. And he like immediately replied to me. And then I wrote back and he like immediately replied again, and he wrote me like 5 emails in like an hour. So when I was like more of a fan, a friendly person, or trying to be like a peer or colleague, he just ignored me. But when I was a critic, that's not what he normally gets. It had a different social vibe to it than what he's used to, so it stood out, and then he paid attention to me. He didn't like it, and we stopped talking, but he seriously paid attention to me. The moment that I was saying negative things about him to other people, rather than trying to get his attention and talking to him directly. Like, the first email was to him, and it was hoping to have a conversation with him. The second email was to other people, and I did not expect him to reply or care if he replied, and that's when he replied. He's acting so like girls doing dating or that kind of thing. And I think it's notable that people like that, like, he teaches how to play the social game and do office politics and get along with people and be liked by people, etc., etc. He teaches that stuff, but he also does it himself in his own life. It's not just an act, like, he is that kind of person that he's teaching you to be. Which in some way it's good, it's congruent, you know, he's not, like, putting on a show, but also it's kind of sad, because when you watch some of his material, you think maybe this guy's smart, because, you know, some of his points are quite good, he explains some of the things quite well. You're like, this could be a cool guy to know. But then you try to talk to him a little, and he's just totally a social panderer person, total social metaphysics, totally second-handed, doing just very normal social dynamics and getting caught up in it the same way as he's teaching you how to manipulate people, but he is vulnerable to the exact same manipulations that he teaches you to use on other people. Rather than him seeing this is how you manipulate people, and then also knowing how to defend against it, he just thinks that's how life is. He teaches people to do it, but he also has it done to him, and he's fine with that. So I think that's interesting that he's like that. Patio 11 has elements of that as well, because Patio 11 sees through a lot of social manipulation stuff on his Twitter, but he doesn't object to it. He's not against it. He's fine with people doing it to him, and he'll respond positively to it some, which I find a bit sad, like, because I'm, like, impressed that someone sees the game rules that well and they know what's going on and how things work. And I would expect that they would be a bit red pill and not be such a fan of the game once they understand how it works. But some of the people, they learn the unwritten rules of society and then just totally embrace them and are perfectly happy to follow them, not just use them to get what they want from other people, but to follow them when other people initiate with them, to respond appropriately as one is supposed to. They try to play all the roles and just always follow the rules, instead of doing it in a more selective and selfish way.
And the anti-rational memes do this by suppressing creative criticism, while there are rational memes which rather encourage creative criticism. So especially the anti-rational memes that suppress creative criticism, they have to take advantage of this space or potential for doing things unthinkingly, because if you're thinking, that means you'd be error correcting, that means you would be using creative criticism. And the potential for doing things unthinkingly comes out of this space where we're able to do what memes do is they hijack that space and entrench certain patterns of behavior that we can do unthinkingly. And again, they have to do that, otherwise we would be able to recognize them quickly and error correct our way out of doing them.
Being able to do things unthinkingly is really important. That's how we walk. That's how we talk. Like, it's not the words we say that are unthinking, but the how we say them, like saying the correct sounds out of our mouth, is something we do without thinking about it. It's really good when you get a skill, so it takes less or, you know, approximately zero conscious attention. Then you can, you know, walk and chew gum. If walking took your conscious attention, you couldn't chew gum at the same time. You can walk and chew gum precisely because you've gotten so good at walking, it's so automatic and unthinking, that you no longer need to think in order to successfully walk. Yeah, people take into account a lot of context when they're solving a problem, so they're not consciously paying full attention to all of the context, they just automatically take some of it into account. That is a common thing, that's good. I agree with that example.
There's something about, so the description is, let's say, a discussion of how mindfulness meditation may help in discovering the presence of irrational memes. Now, that's a pretty big topic, where basically 5 minutes out of 6 minutes, we're 5 minutes in out of 6 minutes total in the video, and he's just basically gotten his description of memes out, like even what they are, which I found, like not to be the clearest presentation. But I mean, part of it is like there's a lot of meme content in BOI. There's a lot of discussion about the topic, and he's trying to compress that in, like, you know, not very much time, and then relate it to the topic of mindfulness meditation. So
he was trying to compress it, and that wasn't even the topic of his video. He was making that like a part of the video, was to like summarize BOI meme stuff really, really fast or something.
And so the whole video, given the scale of the topics that he wants to give a treatment to, the whole video is just trying to accomplish too much. And if he wants to give people like practical advice about dealing with things like binge eating or something, you don't need, this is going to be my original comment, you don't need the conceptual framework of memes to make a short video that's useful about that topic. Like, you know, you could talk about this book or this essay. You don't need to try and bring in the whole discussion of anti-rational memes. It's unnecessary. if you want to discuss anti-rational memes, or memes in general, that's also a fine topic. But you shouldn't be trying to shoehorn in that discussion into another discussion. Or at the very least, you should have like, your hour-long meme video, and then you link that, and then that can be like the prerequisite video, and then people can watch your stuff that builds off of that. That would be a reasonable structure. But I don't think this is a very reasonable structure, and I don't think it's a very good or clear treatment. And like, he's not going to say a lot in a minute that's going to help anybody.
And it's not just the issue of would it help someone else. What about helping himself? Is he going to learn more about memes by giving this 1-minute careless, sloppy summary? No. He's not trying to further his own understanding here. He's not trying to work out a better, more detailed understanding of the matter. He's not thinking out loud either. This is like scripted. And then, on the other hand, is he going to get criticism of his understanding of memes that helps him understand it better? Is he going to get good critical feedback? Not really. He might get complaints that it was vague and dumbed down, but he's not going to get criticism of his actual understanding of the topic, which, while I'm skeptical it's very good, I'm sure it goes into more detail than what is in this video. Like, I'm sure he knows more about it than what's in this video. If he actually wrote all that down, we could give him useful feedback, but we can't actually figure out very well what he's getting right and wrong based on this video. So even if he was listening to us and we wanted to help him, this video would not work. Justin, your video is 41 minutes of analysis of a 6-minute video. You went into a bit more depth on what you covered or didn't cover, or what you think and stuff. Although, that particular point, I think I just heard Hermes say something when I was replaying him and just commented. I think I saw something about it before on Discord or in Alan's blog post, which I haven't read, but I saw like a few words from. I don't know, I remember seeing that issue before. And so I was mostly just commenting, it wasn't like a direct reply to the video. But yeah, I can comment on what you said in the video a lot more than I could on what Hermes said.
You're not going to convey that in such a short amount of time because you had, so much introductory discussion. There's like the social intro, and then the stuff about Harris, and then the stuff about being distracted, and the human capabilities, and then the meme stuff. And now he's going to get to meditation. So let's continue.
So it's been a while since
He's just like saying he didn't read it for a while. Like, why did he only read it once if it's so good? How many times has he read BOI? Like, if it's his favorite book, has he read it like 5 times yet? That seems like a reasonable number to get started and then reread it every few years as well. Like, what sort of effort has he actually put into these books that he's talking about?
But I highly doubt he talks about memes in the book. But I do think that there is a sense in which, to say,
like, why didn't he check before he made this video with the content? Like, he couldn't even I don't know when the Harris book came out, but even if it was conceivable that it came out, when like memes had been part of the discussion and Harris could know about them, like you just like check the index, man. Like, honestly, and why do you have paper copies of books? Like, what is that? Just get text. Get.
Yeah, the index. That's what I said. Justin, you made the same point. And I literally checked, and it has an index, and you can view the index on Amazon. But I mean, he has a paper copy with an index as well.
At least, anyway.
Able to be more thoughtful and mindful about your space of thinking, or capacity to think in a moment in which you might not be thinking, can be extremely valuable to overcome your rationalities.
I totally forgot. You can also just search on Amazon. Amazon waking up. Oh. Wait, it was auto-completing, wasn't it? Oh, well, waking up. Wait, what the fuck? Not waking up White. Waking up Harris. But you can fucking search inside this book and hit meme. 0 results for meme. There we go. Let's try some other words. Gene. Yeah, gene comes up. Reason. Oh, reason comes up a lot. Show 20 more results. Deutsch. Oh, 0. Burn. Pinker. Ooh, Pinker's in it. And see, you can search books. It's fun. He should try that.
Method, because like maybe Hermes has something useful to say about this topic. Seriously, like he could have some good, useful tips that people might find helpful. But the discussion has been at such an incredibly high level of abstraction from anything real that I will never know.
Book in the description for kind of maybe someone. I will see you next time. Keep making progress.
I will be hitting neither.
He said something like unshackling or irrationalities. He also threw in maybe, which is unnecessary. If it's information about how to unshackle your irrationalities, you're not saying it's guaranteed to work. You don't have to head with a maybe. But also, unshackling irrationalities is not the right terms. It's like a new metaphor. It wasn't part of what he was talking about. And it's not very clear. Like, irrationalities are now like shackles? Why? How so? Like, he's not explaining it. And he's just throwing it in at the end. They're like shackles because they keep us down. They make it harder to think. Like, literal shackles, you're just stuck, like, sitting there all day. Like, you're shackled to the wall or whatever. So you can think, you just can't do much else. So it's not a very good comparison directly. But so anti-rational memes are like limiting. They imprison us in the walls of or the boundaries of bad ideas or something. Does it mean that? Well, first of all, shackles are different than prisons. Like a prison cell and a shackle are different things. They have somewhat different purposes. Sometimes both are used at the same time, but frequently not. But also, like, all of that is just kind of vague. And he hasn't explained. It's just sort of reason is good and frees us from the bad ideas or something. It's like that level of quality thinking.
But so overall, like I didn't really get the point of the video. I didn't really find that it clarified anything. And
Didn't get the point of the video. Yeah, I would agree with that. That was also my impression of the video. You're supposed to be able to watch it in 6 minutes, or probably 3 minutes, because, like, why wouldn't you be able to watch it at 2x? And you're supposed to pick up the point that fast. Like, look how much time we spent on it. I've been dealing with this video between talking about it myself and Justin's 40-minute video for, like, an hour and a half or something. That's a lot of time to put into the 6-minute video. Like, that's a lot of study. It's a high ratio of thought to video content. And we're still not seeing the point. That's like a really bad sign. That someone could put like that much work into your video and still not see the value in it.
the whole point is in
And not just any someone, but specifically some of the people who are most familiar with BOI and know the most about it.
looking at it was, so David said this is an interesting connection. So somebody's going to see this and watch this video and maybe think that they understood something about the beginning of infinity when they really haven't. So I don't think David should be endorsing videos of this quality.
Also, David uses the word interesting here, which is a thing Justin does sometimes, is calling things, quote, interesting. Because it's a very non-committal social thing to do. It's very common, not just among intellectuals, but like everywhere. People call stuff interesting because even bad things can be interesting. It is common for something to be interesting if it's good or bad. You don't have to commit yourself to whether it's good or bad. You haven't actually said that you like it or approve of it. That makes you immune to criticism. If someone says this video is shitty, David can say that didn't prevent it from having an interesting connection just because the video is bad. I'm not wrong, David can say. So he really avoided committing himself while also implying that he liked it and it was good. So you can take it as he liked it, it's good, it's an endorsement, you should watch the video because David thinks it's good, etc., etc. Like, you can totally do that, but if you challenged him and you hated it, he has plenty of room to backpedal. And you might think that this is done with like a lot of words, and you know, it probably is, but very specifically, the one word, interesting, is the most common word for doing this. It's really common to be with that exact single specific word. David didn't say the possibilities for criticism were interesting, he said the connection was interesting. So I don't think that's a very plausible interpretation of what David meant. Alright, now we're on Alan's blog post on the same video. I think I might have skimmed this before, like this much. I think I saw something like this, that there was an issue with the term lost in thought, which I talked about a lot earlier. But I don't think I read like the whole paragraph or anything. Let's see. Yup. Alright, well, agree. Right, so if you want more Harris criticism, I linked 3 blog posts from me earlier, and if you click on Alan's blog post, you'll find 2 more near the top. And this one has 36 comments, which I think I've read, but I'm not positive, so I'm going to look through them very quickly. Mr. Anon. They're arguing about the Brandons. Oh, epistemic warrant is justificationism. It is refuted in critical rationalism to some extent, and especially in it's extra super. Wait, what? Oh, I did yes or philosophy, so that would be why. Anyways, I make a lot of points not in Popper here, specifically about why we should not evaluate ideas by a point score or anything equivalent to that. We don't evaluate the goodness of ideas on a continuum. That's an error. So the concepts like strong arguments or weak arguments are errors. All arguments are decisive or incorrect. One or the other, that's it. There's something bad about this discussion, like in a meta perspective. Look how much text there is. And like Alan wrote all this stuff discussing with this guy. And it's going into detailed back and forth. So it's getting a bit parochial. It's not just talking about the general issues. It's actually responding to Mr. Anon. dealing with Mr. Anon's, personally, his ideas and opinions, whatever. And then he just hit and run. He discussed so much, and then he just left. Like this much, and then instantly done, end of discussion, just cut it off in the middle. So it's like he started a major project, got Alan to invest significant effort into the project, and then he quit. Abruptly gone, left, doesn't want to discuss anymore. And it's not suitable very well for getting other people to continue where Mr. Anon left off. So he made a personalized project that no one else is going to finish, and he didn't finish it, and he got Alan to put effort into it. And that is a dangerous thing. That is something to be careful with. It's a problem I run into a lot, where people hit and run with questions. That Hope Nager guy did that on Discord the other day. He just happened to see like this one conversation where criticism of Luli was mentioned, and then he was like, what's wrong with Luli? And he like wanted to know this one thing, and he never talks about anything else. He doesn't talk about Popper, doesn't talk about Rand, he doesn't talk about AI. He's supposedly interested in Popper and AI, but he never has any questions about them. He never discusses, he never participates, he writes nothing, he doesn't make videos. But all of a sudden, he just happened to see a few messages, and he disagreed with them, and then he wanted to talk about that, and he was asking things that would take a huge amount of effort to explain to him. And he was linked to a huge amount of material explaining it, and he did not have anything whatsoever to say about it. But he wanted to like suddenly have a debate where he got me to put a bunch of work into explaining and condensing this huge amount of information for him. Just that particular thing at that particular moment. And he was hostile when I talked about, why are you having this conversation over other ones? Like, why should we be focusing our effort on this? When I wanted to do project management and prioritization, and to put things in context, like what's his background knowledge? What kind of person is he? What's he doing? You know, trying to get into issues like, is this going to be an ongoing project where he actually has discussions over time? Like, or am I just supposed to answer his questions just because he asked them, and he's not committing to saying anything else ever again in the future. He's not trying to make progress on an ongoing basis, and he's not trying to ask non-parochial questions. Like, it was a particularly parochial thing to ask about. So I didn't really want to get drawn into having a long discussion about a particularly hard topic with a person who's particularly lacking in background knowledge and discussion skills. And people do not like that. They want you to just jump in and answer whatever the fuck it is they want. And then they will absolutely just at any moment quit and leave. And so you have to be very careful to write responses to them in a way that it's general purpose and generic, and even if they never talk again, you won't regret having written it. And I think a lot of stuff makes that hard. It's set up to draw you into writing a bunch of good material that's not going to get a lot of value, because the person you're talking to doesn't value the stuff he's asking for very much. He just wants free ice cream that he values at 50 cents. And the cost of producing the ice cream is, $1,000. Like, the amount of effort Alan put into this conversation, if Alan was doing consulting, paid consulting at a reasonable rate, how much money would he charge for explaining this much stuff to someone? Like $500 or something seems fairly reasonable. Like, that's the sort of value Alan's putting into the discussion. Like, I'm not against that idea of like, if you don't respond to this criticism in 10 weeks or something, then you owe $10. But like, most people don't want to do that, I'm pretty sure. Like, I'm fine with that idea if it was really, really voluntary, like if people actually genuinely wanted to do it. But I think what would actually happen is people would feel pressured into it, or to some extent they might just be willing to pay for stuff, not because they seriously intend to respond, but just because it's worth the money to them. Like, it would have to charge like a lot of money to actually like pay for my consulting time if they're going to drop it, if you're going to look at it that way. Whereas if it's more like a token amount of like $10, it's like, I don't want people to feel like it's okay to do this because they paid the $10. Like, I'd rather have it be free than underpriced, because very low pricing, if people pay for something, it gives them social permission to do it. And I don't want to give them social permission, like it's fine to ask for a bunch of help and then not follow up. Like, I understand that that's going to happen sometimes. Sometimes people fail, but I try to avoid it. I think it's bad or whatever. And I don't want to say, well, if you pay $10, then don't worry about it, or anything remotely in that ballpark. Like, I'd be a lot more inclined to do the money timer thing if someone brought it up themselves, rather than if I brought it up or had it as a general policy. Because then it seems a lot more something they actually want to do voluntarily. But there are a lot of ways people self-pressure themselves. They try to manipulate themselves, they try to make themselves do things that they somewhat partially don't want to do. There's a lot of, like, quote, life hack tips for that kind of thing. And that the money escrow thing is a common one, where you say things like, you get an accountability buddy or something, and you say, you know, I'm going to do a writing session every Sunday, and if I miss a Sunday, I will pay you $100. You don't even get anything in return, you're just pressuring yourself. And the buddy holds you accountable, and in return, sometimes he gets the $100. Because, like, he asks you on every Monday, hey, did you write yesterday? And it's, like, harder to lie to him or whatever than to lie to yourself, I guess. So people do that kind of thing, and I generally think that that's bad, and if you need to resort to methods like that, then you don't really want to do it, and you're not going to do very good work. And I understand some people are in a hard situation, they're unhappy, they have their psychology screwed up, and it's hard to come up with any good solution. So if they want to do that to themselves, like, I'm not hard against it, I'm not saying never do that, but I don't want to be involved with it, I don't like it. You know, if you want to manage your life that way, that's your business, that's your thing, separately from me. I don't like the material that recommends that kind of thing as if it's actually good. It's similar to time trackers and, like, screen time monitors and limiters and stuff like that. And people will do things like block themselves out of accessing Facebook during certain hours of the day or whatever, so it literally won't load in their browser. Or Hacker News has some feature where if you, like, go to it too often, it'll just stop loading. And you can, like, set that in your own settings. They added that on purpose so people could do that to themselves. It's sort of like using parental controls on yourself. Which, by the way, I disapprove a lot of using parental controls on children in general. Because the primary use of parental controls is to prevent children from doing things the child wants to do, such as play games more, or read websites more, or whatever, watch YouTube more. I think parental controls can be useful in limited contexts, like a 5-year-old probably doesn't want to accidentally see a porn video, so in the interest of helping him instead of preventing him from doing what he wants, having a porn blocker on could be good for him. But a lot of parental controls are very clearly for the purpose of thwarting the child, rather than, like, helping him actually get more of what he wants. And I think that a lot of what people do with themselves is the same way. Like, the reason someone is creating a Facebook blocker is not that they're going to accidentally go to Facebook, it's because they like Facebook and they want to visit it, and they're trying to sort of control themselves, rather than change their minds. They're not rationally resolving the conflict of ideas. They're not persuading themselves about what is actually better in a thorough way that changes their values. They're instead trying to ignore or overrule somehow some of their values and ideas without counter-arguing it. So they're actually acting irrationally. They're not arguing against the Facebook idea adequately and thoroughly enough to change their mind thoroughly. So that's why they have the ongoing problem. And they're not solving it with the blocker, which is not an argument. It's just assuming the conclusion, Facebook is bad, I should not be on it during these hours, and then not debating it, just that's their assumption, for whatever reason that they don't really explain fully, and then they force their way. It's like using violence or force instead of reason. Right, so Alan was suspicious of Hermes' understanding of the Waking Up book, and he seems to have been right to be suspicious based on what I said a couple hours ago. Wait, seriously? Some people want to binge eat because it's fun and they like it. And not everyone is trying to lose weight. And even if you feel guilty about binge eating, that doesn't mean you know you don't want to binge eat. It means you know that you have mixed feelings about binge eating. You might think, well, I partly don't want to binge eat, but I also want to binge eat even more than that. So my mixed feelings favor binge eating, which does not count as overall not wanting to binge eat. Anyway. You could not know your thinking and correct your errors. Like, we do a lot of error correction subconsciously. And people might have trouble imagining that, and some of it's hard to explain, but some of it's easy to explain, because if you look up shit like parity checking, and if you read stuff like this, you will see how easy it is without any intelligence or creativity to do some amount of error checking and error correction stuff. Parity checking is just, you have like data, and then you have one bit, which is a summary value for the rest of the data. In particular, it says whether it's an even number or an odd number. So if there's an error, there's approximately a 50% chance that the parity check will correctly notice there's an error, because the parity, which says whether it's even or odd, will not match whether the number is even or odd. It's better than a 50% chance to detect errors, because it depends on the physical way the errors happen, but a lot of errors are a single bit got flipped. So it's going to catch all single bit flips. And then it won't catch 2-bit flips, but it will catch 3-bit flips, and so on. And that's not a 50-50 odds kind of scenario. And it's not the binary number that it checks if it's even or odd, because that only depends on the last digit. It's just the number of ones and zeros in the string. And there's more advanced stuff like checksums. So you can look that kind of stuff up if you're interested. And it'll give you some sense that some amount of unconscious error correction is clearly possible. So Alan's making the point that you can have conscious thought and not do error correction, which I also said earlier. Yeah, I agree. Wow, Alan typed in that much of... That's like fucking half the video. It's a 6-minute video. Maybe not half, but that's a significant portion of the entire video. You can see people are putting in more effort than Hermes did. However, Hermes is not going to get the same level of attention on his next video. Unless he changes his name and we don't realize it's the same person. And he gets rid of the face cam. Then he might get this sort of attention again. But that's not a big practical problem. He probably won't do that. He probably doesn't actually want or care about our attention that much. Oh, regarding like hit and run questions, the FI perspective on those is not normal. Because the way I see them is that the main thing is they're in a starting point for discussion. And starting points aren't so important. The important thing is that the discussion be a beginning of infinity. That it be unlimited, unbounded criticism, that it be able to change topics and add new topics into it, that it be able to branch, and so on. So the discussion is this like powerful, important thing that can be ongoing and can make unlimited progress over time. It doesn't really matter where you start, as long as you can, tangent and stuff. And also, it's important to try to resolve disagreements, not just to say your initial opinions and stop, but to make a serious effort to solve problems and resolve conflicting ideas and deal with criticism and try to figure out what the actual truth is. And that rational people can actually can do that. You don't have to just do a superficial debate and then give up on each other. If you're both being reasonable, you can actually make progress in a reasonable amount of time and start resolving some of your disagreements. And that's a productive, valuable thing to do. But a lot of people aren't looking for that kind of discussion when they start asking questions. And so there's a mismatch of standard discussion types and expectations and stuff on FI versus what a lot of people are used to, where they do more superficial stuff. And so I'll see a discussion and be like, okay, this initial question led to finding something we disagree about, so we should now tangent the discussion to discussing this disagreement and trying to make progress on it. Because a lot of people are like, well, that's not about my initial question, I don't really care anymore, I just want to ask a new question. And they'll keep doing that over and over and having a lot of short discussions but no deep discussions. Whereas I think deep discussions are more valuable in general. I mean, there's certainly some scope for both, but I think it's important to have some deep discussions. Deep discussions are also the part of FI that's more unique, because you can get short or superficial or quick answers at a lot of places. There are plenty of Q&A podcasts where someone asks a question and then the podcaster talks about it for 10 minutes and gives an answer, and it doesn't really go past that. And I'll do some of that, but it's the deep discussions that actually make progress are rarer and more important. Right, this is a good point. So if you're a space where ideas come and go, that's kind of like a bucket that they flow into and out of, which Popper already covered. And it leaves out a lot of the intentionality of choosing what ideas to give attention to, or accept or believe or whatever. So it leaves out that you're directing your creativity towards solving particular problems. It's not just random. You're doing targeted problem solving, which is what Popper calls the spotlight approach rather than the bucket approach. Yeah, and a very important thing about anti-rational memes is they don't just shut down thinking, they shut down critical thinking about certain areas, specifically criticizing the anti-rational memes. However, they harness and use your creativity. They don't just disable your creativity in general. They leave you, functional to survive, like to eat, whatever, communicate with other people, hunt, farm. But also, they harness your creativity to defend against threats. They get you to think of new counter-arguments against rational stuff. They use your creativity in their defense of themselves, in their way of dealing with criticism, as they get your creativity to help defend against criticism. Voice identification, that could work some. Voice is definitely harder to fake, and a lot of voice box stuff, or computer-generated voices, sound fake, like not a real human. But I don't generally want to push people for identification. Right, this is what I was talking about, putting creativity into things like resisting critical rationalism and defending justificationism. Yeah, binge eaters put creative thought into like what foods to get. Sometimes they discover new foods and like research different recipes or whatever. They're not just not thinking. Okay, so this is a little bit misleading because I think what Hermes is doing is extremely typical. Like, a lot of people read this and they'll think Hermes is way worse than average, bottom 5% of book readers. Whereas I read this and I think, okay, Hermes is normal, bottom 90% of book readers. Maybe even more than that. Maybe it's bottom like 97%. Because the vast majority of people who read a book like The Beginning of Infinity, or Conjectures and Refutations, or Atlas Shrugged, do not understand very much of it, and misstate a lot of what they read. And that is fairly inevitable on a first reading and you haven't discussed it, because it has all this complex thinking in it, all these ideas, all this knowledge. And unless you're one of the smartest people around, you're not going to be able to error correct all of that by yourself on one reading of the book and actually fix all your misunderstandings of what the book was saying. You need an ongoing learning process where you build up your knowledge, practice, and learn some things at a time instead of everything all at once, and get feedback from critical discussion with other people. And if you do all those things, then you have more of a chance to understand the book better. And Hermes has not done those things. At least not properly. And you can tell that because of the lack of any public record or documentation of him doing them. He doesn't post to the discussion forum for his so-called, or alleged, or whatever, favorite book. He does not seek out people in that community or involved with those ideas and try to talk to all of them and give them all a chance and see if he can learn from any of them. He doesn't do stuff like that. You don't see him posting on Popper forums either, or whatever else like that I monitor. Is he put creative effort into his Family Guy impressions? Or just like, keep on doing your life or something? Anyways, so there's a bunch of comments on this, so I was going to look through the comments. So Popper proposed, more epistemology to help solve the epistemology problem. I don't see an issue. What these people are mad about or objecting about or whatever is they want something like how to prove infalliblistically solutions to problems. And the Duhem-Quinn problem, it's not a very good criticism of CR, which is fallibilist anyway, but it's a great criticism of justificationists who are trying to prove things and get infallibility. And for them, it's a serious problem. And Popper did not offer a solution that will work for them for what they want to do, which is kind of contrary to CR anyways. So for them, there's no solution, they're screwed. And so from that, they feel like Popper didn't solve the problem for them. The video is nonsense for 2 reasons. Alright, well at least they were clear on where they stand. First, it admits that Popper claimed theories are falsified by observations, which contradict the theory, and this is what Duhem shows. Well, observations do not contradict. Right, we know that. What Popper claimed, and which I think is what Alan was actually admitting, is that if you accept a theory and also some background knowledge or some other theories, if you accept an observation and some background knowledge or context or whatever, like some logical point about how it applies to a theory, then, given you've accepted those things, you can refute an observation. Refute a theory. Observations refute theories given that you accept them, and you accept the reasoning by which they refute the theory. Now, this is important because it's different than confirmations. Confirmations do not prove theories are true, even if you accept the observation and the some like deductive logic or whatever about how it relates to the theory. Confirmation still doesn't work, but falsification does work if you accept that much stuff. And why do you need to accept that much stuff instead of say nothing at all? Because of the quote Duhem Quinn problem. That's what it says, is the theory refutes the observation given that you accept the observation refutes the theory given that you accept 1, the observation, and 2, the background knowledge, including the interpretation of the theory. Like, you have to accept the belief that you've correctly determined the theory predicted Y and that you observed X, which contradicts Y. You know, something like that. You need just like a little bit of background knowledge and background theories or whatever, and you need the observation. If you accept those, then you can reject the theory. Like, that's just basic stuff, and Duhem Quinn is not, like, impressive. I don't know. The guy literally, like, Alan was talking about the state of the debate earlier, and the guy confused that with what experts believe. Like, he just doesn't understand judging, you know, what are the set of ideas available and what refutes what. You can understand that and judge it. And that's different than what do people with fancy reputations believe. You might assume or expect that people with fancy reputations ought to understand the state of the debate and have, like, informed, intelligent opinions about it and so on, but frequently they don't. And so a better thing to do, if you wanted to go by other people's opinions instead of understanding the issue yourself, as a you know, first approximation or for whatever reason, there are valid reasons to be interested in that. Instead of asking Alan, what do the experts think, you should just ask Alan, what do you think? Because Alan is a better expert than they are. So instead of saying, what does the lit say, just say, what does Alan think? What are Alan's conclusions? Like, that would be a more reasonable thing to ask for. Alan knows more about it, and if you actually respect Alan's expertise and stuff, like you just said you did at length, why are you asking Alan to relate to you what other experts think, instead of just asking directly for Alan's expertise? Like, he doesn't actually respect Alan as an expert. He's being dishonest. Oh, I see. So Alan said that the stuff the guy has been studying is a dead end, so then the guy decided to dead end the conversation to evade the issue. Rather than, say, listen to Alan's expertise, which, as I said, he does not, in fact, respect. Contrary to his repeated lying above. Yeah, this is very important, that in a theoretical, like, abstract sense, not abstract, but so for daily practical purposes, it doesn't matter. But if you're trying to understand, like, the fundamentals of things, then our epistemology depends on the laws of physics. It's approximately autonomous in how we normally treat it, but it in fact depends on the laws of physics. And if the laws of physics were different in a big way, then we have majorly different epistemology theories. Epistemology depends on what physical processes process information in what ways. Like the laws of computation, which are determined by the laws of physics. That totally, in a huge way, determines how we think, how we can think, what kind of thinking is effective, etc., etc. So physics is extremely important to epistemology, logic, math, everything, computation. Like, our theories of math depend on how computation works, what computes into what. They're not just these abstract logical things the way people think of them. That whole view, which is Kantian, I don't know how original it is to Kant or how widespread it is elsewhere, but certainly Kant emphasized it and got a lot of credit for it. That stuff is wrong. And that is explained exactly where Alan says, Fabric of Reality, Chapter 10, the one that talks about math, very important. That gives you the basics of it. It's not a full explanation, but no one knows this, and some people get, like, people are very hostile to this idea. Like, Robert Spillane would not consider it. People just will not listen about this stuff. It's the same with deduction. Deduction depends on physics, just the same as math does, as David explains. Now, you can set this aside for most purposes most of the time. You know, you can just treat physics and epistemology as independent, and as long as there are no major changes to our understanding of physics, it's fine. It's not going to hurt anything. Epistemology was invented, discovered, and worked out in the context of the physics we live in, so it is appropriate to those physics, as far as we know. However, if you're going to talk theory and talk like these big picture points, then what they're saying is just wrong, and yeah. This depends on terminology, specifically what you call a scientific law. You could say a scientific law only forbids things, but also you could say that they, explain about what works in reality to some extent. That they have positive content about helping you understand how reality works. Like if scientific law is synonymous with scientific theory or hypothesis or whatever, people often include explanatory content in those. If you just mean like, one of Newton's laws that's like a mathematical formula or something, then there's still sort of some implied content, because it's not just a list of things that are excluded. It organizes things into patterns, and it shows you what the pattern is. So I think the content is not just what it forbids, but how it's organized to present a pattern. Like a formula is a condensed version of a huge amount of data points. If you say like x squared, you're explaining a pattern that you could say, 1 maps to 1, 2 maps to 4, 3 maps to 9, and so on and so forth. But if you say the pattern is x squared, you're giving extra information. So I'm going to disagree with this and say, even if you treat scientific laws pretty narrowly, you're getting some extra information. There's often more than one form there's always more than one form you could put math in. You could write the same math different ways, and the choice of presentation is related to what's elegant, what's useful. So there's extra content there besides what's forbidden. Wait, he says such regularities, not just regularities. So the such is a backwards reference to, I guess, to scientific laws.